Hey everyone, this is Mike here from The Art of Guitar, here today with a type of video that I don't do very often, and that's a product video. You're probably used to my brutally honest gear reviews, where I take guitars and other things that I own already and do a video on what I like and dislike about them, and I've owned them for a while, so that I have a lot to say about them. But this is going to be a little bit different today because the people at Positive Grid got a hold of me, and I was just kind of expecting it because a lot of other YouTubers have been doing reviews on these amps. At first I wasn't interested in doing another review of the same amp that a lot of other people have been doing, but I told the guy, go ahead and just send me one. I'll play with it a little bit and I'll do a brutally honest review of it. And they offered to pay, to have me do the video, which is standard, for a lot of YouTubers. But I didn't accept the money. I'm like, you know what? Even though this is a standard thing, I don't want to be biased in any way. So if they gave me a bunch of money, I'd feel obligated to say nice things about their product. But this guy was totally cool. He's like, okay, that makes total sense. And I think he was a little bit happy because it's kind of a win-win situation. They get a free review video out of this and I get a free amp. They just had to gamble on whether I'd like it or not. So I'm going to make this video pretty quick. It's not going to be like a long, drawn out, every feature type video, but I want to give you my overall impression. And I played with this thing for about a week. So I feel like I'm not an expert at it, but I have a decent working knowledge of what this thing is capable of for us guitar players. All right, I'll take you through my journey chronologically of what I discovered about this amp as I pulled it out of the box all the way up until today, all right? So I pull it out of the box. I was surprised to see the look of it. It actually has a really great look. It's kind of ambiguous, if you will. It could be a rock amp, it could be a blues, it could be a country. So it has a great neutrality to it that allows a lot of people from different styles to use, and it feels like it fits the bill. It's pretty light, and for being an at-home type amp, it's great because you can move it from room to room. If you're in the living room practicing and your dad yells at you, you can just move it to your room easily. It comes with this leather strap, which feels really sturdy. I like that. It's not heavy, but it has enough heft to it to feel substantial. And I feel like if I just happen to drop it or something, it's not just going to shatter and break. It doesn't have any loose parts inside. So it's got that solid feel to it that I like. It gives me confidence in the unit. But it's not so heavy that you couldn't just pick it up and move to the other room if you had to. All right, next thing I did was I plugged it in. And one thing I didn't really like was that it's one of those power supplies that has the thick AC cable into a box into a skinnier cable. So we have this one right here that plugs in kind of like you would with an effects pedal. So let's plug it in. The reason I don't like that so much is because all my other amps just have the thick AC cable plugged right into it. And it gives me a sense of security, like it's really locked in. If you accidentally hit it or the amp falls backwards onto it, it's not gonna, bend it or break it. But I understand why they went with the skinnier cable. I wish I knew the technical terms for all this stuff, but I don't. It really makes it flexible so that if you have to move this thing down to the floor or put it on the table or whatever, it's easy to do with a thinner cable. If you have the big thick AC cable plugged into the back and you're trying to move it all over the place, it can make it a little bit more difficult to do. So I gotta keep telling myself this is an at-home amp. And then things like that don't bug me as much. But if I was using this thing at gigs, I would definitely want that thicker AC cable directly into it. All right, then I plugged in my cable. Try to keep it out of the way. Now, when I went to turn it on, I noticed something kind of goofy. This on-off switch is very tiny. It's like those little switches they put in pedals. And so just like that, you have a good solid red LED to let you know that it's on. And then you'll see it took a little while, but all of a sudden the lights came on. That's typical with a lot of these kind of amps. So that would have been really great if they could have put a bigger power switch on it, only because once again, it makes me feel like it's a little bit more solid. Having such a small, tiny switch gives me a different impression of the unit, almost like it's more of a toy, even though it's not. I love the look of these knobs. The gold and black always remind me of Marshall, so I love that. And I keep referencing effects pedals, but these are like the little knobs on effects pedals. And they have to be small like this in order to fit enough of these on this unit. And so I think they're the perfect size. They're smooth. They don't feel cheap. They don't feel like they're just gonna pull off. Sometimes effects pedals have that problem. And then I just looked around it a little bit. I noticed a headphone jack, which is great. Had some preset numbers and a tap feature, which I thought was cool. And then it says tuner if you hold, save the preset by holding. So I like the fact that it has intelligent buttons that are multi-purposed. Now I wanted to take this grill off in order to see what the speaker configuration was because I knew I was gonna have to mic it for this demo, for this review video, but I couldn't quite get it off, and I take that as a good sign. It means it's on there really well. I even took a screwdriver. I know I could have taken it off if I wanted to, but this thing's securely on there. But we have two speakers here, some crazy stuff going on in the middle. I didn't get too specific with the layout. But I realized once I put some sound through it that it sounded a lot like those Bose systems. They have little speakers, but they fill the room somehow. And this thing had the same effect. So I hit a big E chord, like I always do when I try out amps for the first time, and all of a sudden the E chord filled the room, and I'm like, wow, how could this little tiny unit make such big sound? I don't know what kind of voodoo they're using to make it sound so big, but I'm not going to question it. I'm just going to enjoy it. All right, the next thing I noticed were all these different amp choices. It started off with acoustic, bass, clean, and then it went into, I think, 4 different, more overdriven type amps. So I skipped over acoustic and bass. I know you can hook up an acoustic to this thing. Maybe I'll do another video on that later, or a bass. And I went to a setting called glassy. And I thought that's an interesting name, but let's give it a try. Once again, it's that filling the room sound. It's hard to really capture that through one microphone, but when you're in the room with this thing, it sounds like a much bigger amp. It's crazy. So let me do this. Let me just hit a few open chords, maybe some power chords to really give you the feel of this glassy setting. Now, a lot of people are probably like, yeah, but it's covered in effects. You know, a lot of amps can sound really good with enough reverb and delay and compression and all that kind of stuff. So I had the same thought, so I took the effects off. Let's dial out the reverb, the delay, the modulation, and see what it sounds like now. It's one of the few times I've taken effects off of an amp like this and actually liked it better. Isn't that crazy? It still sounds very substantial. It's full. It doesn't have that hollowness that some amps have when you take away the effects. So I was really excited about that. Part of me was already sold once I heard this one setting. And I was like, okay, if I was just gonna use this as a practice amp or to teach with or whatever, I'd be set with this sound. It just has such a good tone that it allows you to feel like you're playing better. I don't know if that makes any sense. If your tone is choppy and it's not quite there, it can actually affect your performance and make you feel like you're worse than you are. And we all need as much help as we can get, right? So over the week, I've noticed that this setting allows me to really be in my element, to be in the zone when I play. Then I thought, okay, before we start messing around too much with the distortion, let's go back to the clean and just make sure that's cool. I was very happy with the clean sound. I gave it the old front pickup test. Nice and thick. When I went to the treble side, it cut through really well. Then I slowly started to dial back in some of the effects. So I tried the reverb first. So you can sound like you're in a huge stadium if you want to. One thing I noticed though about the reverb, I know you can get other effects when you add the app and use your smartphone for this thing, but I'm just talking mostly today about the built-in sounds. The reverb that comes with this is great. It really fills up the room, like I said, but the problem is it feels a little disconnected from my playing. Through the years, I'm so used to spring reverbs that when I play, I'm used to a different type of connection to the reverb itself. This feels more like a really expensive studio reverb that you'd put on a vocal or something like that, that enhances the sound, but it just doesn't connect with what I'm playing as well as what I'm used to. I guess you could think of it as more of a transparent reverb versus one that's a little more opaque. I don't know if that's a good way to put it, but hopefully that makes sense. So it kind of feels like it's out there versus like here, filling up from the inside out. It's more like it's just on the outside to me. All right, let's dial that back and bring in some delay. Delay is delay usually, right? It's actually a really cool delay. I mean, right away you can start to sound like the Edge, I guess. That old trick. There's one slight problem though. It comes with a tap tempo, which is awesome. You know, you just tap the button and you're supposed to set the speed of the delay. But for some reason, maybe it's just the specific unit I got, but this particular unit, when I hit the tap button, it doesn't delay in time with my taps. It does some triplet type thing or something. So if I wanted to just go tap, 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 and have it delay like that, usually you would just go tap, 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 and all of a sudden it would replicate that sound with whatever you played. But see how it's faster? It should be did, but it's like did. So that's one thing I would probably change if I was in charge. I would be like, okay, every time you tap, it should delay, at least at first, until you go in and change the parameters. But it's an excellent delay. It sounds like some of my favorite delays that I have in pedals. All right, let's shut that off and let's bring in the mod. This is more of a chorusing sound. All right, it seems like too perfect of a segue, but I'm a bit out of tune, so I'm going to talk about the tuning feature in a second. Before I do though, let's bring in some reverb. Let's bring it back and let's bring some delay. And now clean sound with the mod, the delay, and the reverb together. Let's go to the tuner. It's a hold button, so you hold down the tap, and you'll see some lights change a little bit like that. Oh, maybe not. Just kind of goes black. Never mind. That's another thing I'm going to talk about. All right, let's tune. So if I hit the E string, as you bring it up, it'll turn green. And it's really smart how they have the 5 LEDs so that the middle one's green. So it tells you whether you're sharp or flat, just like a snark. All right, hit tap again. And we're back in business here. That's more like it. Now these LEDs could also be save presets, which is great. You just have to hold it down. Because the button is the light, when you hold it down to save a preset, it's kind of a weird catch-22 that it's supposed to change when it's saved. But you can't see it because your finger is on it. So it's a very strange thing. You just have to hold it down and wait a long time. You could probably figure it out by counting eventually, but I thought that was kind of funny that you're covering the very thing that you need to see. So now every time I hit the first button, it's going to be this sound. Clean sound with the delay, modulation, and reverb. Let's go back to the glassy sound now. See how all the effects followed over to the next one? Let's do this. Let's make this one completely dry. Since I love this tone so much, we'll just do this one as dry to give it a good counterpoint to the previous preset. Now we're going to save this on 2. So I'm going to hold it down. All right, let's go ahead and just play some open chords. We'll go through the rest of the amps so you can hear them. So this is the glassy one, like I said, that I love. We'll bring in a little bit of effects just to open it up a little bit. Is that 90210 that I just played? All right, let's go to the next setting. Now you're gonna hear a huge difference in tone. So here's glassy. This is crunch. Now a lot of people might be like, wow, that really got mid-rangey and weird. You get used to it if you don't compare it to glassy. It's actually a pretty good setting on its own, but it is a kind of a shock to the system when you go from glassy to crunch. It's more of a Motley Crue. By the way, in the app where you could use your phone to control this thing, there's a setting called Motley Crue something something, and it sounds exactly like Motley Crue, so we'll have to get into that in another video. By the way, I'm not going to be talking too much about the features that you could do with your phone. They're amazing, you know, they're limitless basically. I just really wanted to talk about what you get when you pull this thing out of the box and you just start to play on it. So now if you don't love the tone of any of these amps, you could easily just go through like any amp and just change the bass setting, the mid, the treble, and there's a master as well, which is nice. And then overall output all the way to the side. So that's great to have. Let's mess with the gain a little bit because that's another way to really change up the tone. So here's a little more clean version of that. I'll turn the effects down a little bit. Maybe just a bit of reverb. Okay, more gain. Did you notice when I turned the gain knob up, it responded like an actual tube amp? You know, if I were to do that on my tube amps that I use out there, it would have that same response, and I love that. I've been playing amps for decades, and the way that rolled up as I turned it up had that exact same feeling. Okay, so crunch is great. It's a bit thinner than glassy. Let's move on to high gain. I'm in a Heart tribute band, so I felt obligated to play that riff. Pretty heavy though, huh? sustain for days on this setting. And that's not even with the gain all the way up. Let's crank the gain and see how much sustain, that rhymed, we get. Once again, it's very inspiring when you're playing leads and you have that great sustain. It really makes you feel like you're able to flow. Okay, we're on to the last setting, which is metal. Here we go. Got to give it the Master of Puppets test, right? All right, so it has plenty of gain. You know, the metal amp is over the top heavy. I love the sound of it. If that's too much for you, dial it back to high gain. Here it kind of opens up at the top. It's got a more of, I'd say almost more of a modern metal sound compared to the metal setting. Back to metal. See how that has more of the scooped out type sound, maybe the Pantera sound. Let's go back to high gain. I like high gain a lot, actually. I wasn't quite using it a lot this week, but I think I'm going to use it a lot more when I'm practicing with this thing. Back to crunch. Crunch is a little more mellow. You know, it has that mid-range, a little more boxy sound to it. But like I said before, it's great for Motley Crue. All right. But Glassy is my pick for the best, fullest sounding overdriven amp. For a lot of years, I used a Fender Deluxe Reverb with overdrive pedals going into it, and it had that same type of warmth to it, so I'm used to it. There are some features in the back that I haven't really explored too much. I did hook my phone up to it. That's how I found out about that Motley Crue setting, which is great. But you have the USB in the back, so you can hook it up to your computer for a lot of different reasons. I did use that for the firmware update, which was super easy to do. I thought there was going to be a big headache with that, because sometimes that can happen with these type of products, but I hooked it right up, hit like 2 buttons, and the firmware was updated. I saw that there's an aux in as well, so you can hook up your phone to it, I guess, or any other audio source that you want and play along to it. What I really appreciate about how they put this thing together is they didn't overwhelm the initial product with too many features. You could get into that when you get the app and use your phone for it or whatever, but on its own, it's very self-explanatory. They stuck with the basics for the most part, the essentials. And that's a big reason why at first when they sent this to me, I thought, if I don't like this thing, I'm just going to give it away in like a live stream prize or give it to my nephew or something. But now that I've played it for a week, I've decided I have to keep this thing. Sorry guys. Maybe I'll buy another one and give it away or something, but I want to keep this one. It would have been so good to use back when I was teaching private lessons full time, to have one for me and one for my student, just because of the flexibility of sounds and the size and all that good stuff. But there are a few things I wish this thing had, and maybe in the future they're going to add to these and enhance them. But one thing that would have been great is a hole in the bottom to maybe put on a stand. Kind of like I have a keyboard monitor that is about this big, and the bottom has a hole in it. You just twist it onto a mic stand and you could put it anywhere you want. It's very convenient. So I thought that would be really good for this eventually. Otherwise, you just have to set it on a chair or on the floor or on the table, whatever. It's not the end of the world, but it would really be nice to be able to put this thing on a stand. I thought it would be really nice as well to be able to take from this thing, just plug in a cable and route it to another amp cabinet and be able to really enhance your sound that way. Now, because this is an in-home unit, I can see why they didn't offer that feature quite yet, but it would have been great if I just loved one of the tones and wanted to play it out there on my big amp, just to put it on top like a head and just hook it up that way. That would have been an awesome feature. But then you got to start to think about, you'd have to add a lot more power capabilities to this thing, and that would probably add a lot to the price. So I could see why they didn't include that. Now I know it says somewhere that you could use the USB to record this thing like an interface into your computer. But one thing that would have been great is just a dedicated out, whether it's just a balanced out or whatever like a Kemper has, that can go directly into the PA system or into your computer that you can record with. That would have been nice. 2 more things I wish it had. One would be a battery option. Now this sounds a little bit crazy for something like this. It seems like it would take 10D batteries, which is kind of a bummer in its own way. But I think that would have been a great feature, not to have too many batteries, but maybe like 4 AA's or 2 9-volts or something like that. So if you ever want to go camping with it, or you're going to be on a tour bus or something like that, it'd be great to be able to get a few hours out of it at least. And the last thing I wish this thing could do is I wish it could hook up to wireless earbuds. Maybe just have that option. So if you throw in some earbuds, just hit a button and all of a sudden it connects through Bluetooth and you're able to just hear yourself like that. I don't really know, maybe through the app with your phone you're able to do something like that, but I did a little bit of reading and it doesn't sound like you're able to do it with the unit itself. It does have the headphone out, so you could use wired headphones, but having that wireless earbud option would be awesome. But for how great this thing sounds and what you get for that price is incredible. If I had this thing when I first started out, I don't know what I would have done. Back in the day, we were just struggling to get any distortion out of our little practice amps. I remember taking a razor blade to one of my speakers because I read that Jimi Hendrix did that or something. I don't know if that was just a rumor or whatever, just to get some distortion out of those things. And nowadays, you hit a button, you're good to go. You've got almost every sound you ever need in one little box. It's incredible. So I really want to thank Positive Grid for sending this out to me. I thought it was all hype at first, and now that I can see all of it is justified. After playing this thing for a week now, like I said, I'm a believer and I'm keeping this one. And maybe in the future I'll go into a deeper dive where I get into the apps a little bit more and use my iPad or something and show you the features in that, because that seems very extensive and, like I said before, limitless. Okay everyone, I hope that was informative. To anyone curious about the Positive Grid Spark 40, leave me a comment. If you already own one, maybe you have some awesome presets in your app that you want to send me, share with me, or you just want to give your take on this amp and your experiences with it. All right, everyone, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you at the next lesson. Okay, see ya. Bye-bye.